From the maker that brought you Don't Worry Darling full script breakdown comes My Policeman full novel breakdown, starring Harry Styles and I know you like, girl, this video already long enough. Will you come on? All right.
Dan it, Dan it. Dan it, Dan it, Dan it, Dan it, Dan it.
I like that. It's going to be my new theme song.
Dan it, Dan it, Dan it, Dan it, Dan it, Dan it, Batman.
Before I get started, couple of important notes really quick. Please hit the like button. It helps my video get pushed to more people. Spoiler alert, I will be giving full details of this movie, so if that's not something you're interested in, you may want to excuse yourself. Go on. Alright. Also, there are a couple of sensitive topics in here, so I will be choosing my words carefully. So if I kind of sound like I'm working my way around something, that's because I am. Lastly, this is just a helpful hint. If I were you, person watching this video, I would watch the entire video. A special announcement awaits you. Just a heads up. This video was requested by Lulu, so let's dive in. Peacehaven, October 1999. Now, this starts off with friction. First page out the gate. Marion is writing to Patrick, who has come to stay with she and Tom. Why is she writing him if they stay in the same house, you ask? That is an excellent question. At least that's what I was thinking. Like, girl, are you mental? Just go over there and talk to him. But turns out, Patrick is sick and has been for some time. Can't walk, can't talk, just barely hanging on. He communicates via note cards. Drink, lavatory, sandwich. Marion knows him so well that she knows what he wants even before he points to the card. But she lets him do it anyway so he can feel independent or whatever. She goes on to tell him that she hates the neighborhood they live in, and she told Tom she didn't want to live there. But did he listen? Of course not. They're surrounded by a smelly pizza place, a pet shop called Animal Magic, 4 funeral parlors, yes, 4, and a dry cleaners where the staff are apparently London trained, whatever that means. But here we are, child, in this bungalow, because that's what Tom wanted to do. Now, this is where she gets a little spicy with it. She continues her letter to him with not so subtle jabs of what she thinks he expected when he moved in with she and Tom. More so with Tom. And I may be reading into this, but anytime you start a letter with, I no longer want to kill you, yeah, I don't think you should take the rest lightly. I mean, she hit Patrick with a 1-2 punch. She's like, yeah, Tom picked you up, carried you out from the car, brought you in, and said that I would be tending to you, and went on about his way. It's not what you thought it'd be, huh? Is this not what you dreamt of? You see what I've been dealing with. Then her tempo changes as she recounts the day she met Tom. She was 14, he was 15. She was at her homegirl Sylvie's house. They're hanging out, polishing nails, you know, doing what girls do. Marion bends down to play with Midnight the cat, and Sylvie just says, get out. Marion froze like, oh shoot, now she putting me out? But Sylvie is glaring at the door. Marion looks up, and who's standing in the doorway? Tom. She was instantly attracted to him. Tom's description is very similar to Harry's, so we feel you, girl. Except his eyes are blue instead of green, his hair is blonde, and he has a small scar on his chin. So of course, after seeing him, she started to lightweight but heavy stalk him, going out of her way, looking into the windows as she walked by. Can Sylvie come out and play? Oh, Tom, what a pleasant surprise. I didn't know you would be here. Well, that's not exactly what happened, but I imagine she wished she had the courage to tell him that. You see, Marion was a bit of an underdeveloped plain Jane. Sure, she had the red hair that gave her some oomph, but boys just weren't interested in her. She craved, though. That's similar to her parents, who were always affectionate, kissing like no one was watching, although she and her brothers Fred and Harry always were. Harry. The irony, right? But anyways, a few years have gone by, and Sylvie is garnishing all of this attention while Marion is in her bubble of no one wants me, and that's fine. One day, they're on the beach, sunbathing, and Sylvie goes, what are you doing here? Marion looks up, already knowing who it is. What do you want, Tom? Apparently, Tom gets on Sylvie's last nerve because she's always irritated when she sees him. Marion couldn't relate to that. That was the first time she'd seen Tom in his bathing suit, and well, she was liking the view. This is the first time we hear Tom say anything in the book. Haven't you been in? He asked, referring to getting in the water. But Marion couldn't swim, so Sylvie volunteered Tom to teach her. Now you know she was delighted by this. She fixated on the thought of this for the next few years, actually. Why years? Well, Tom went away and became a part of the catering corps, feeding soldiers. While his parents were torn in their feelings, Marion voiced that Tom would be a great chef, to which he replied, "Wasn't I going to teach you to swim?" So in the years of writing his name over and over in her journal and dreaming of the day he taught her to backstroke, Marion decided to be a teacher because it was practical, and she liked school, but more so because it was practical. I'd like to note that this whole time she's writing to Patrick and has said things like "our Tom" when it was your turn to spend weekends with Tom. I'm like, nah, she's sharing, child. But she also said, you know how it is to desire something you can't have. So it's going to be interesting to see how these relationships unfold. Anyways, moving along. It's now spring of 1957 and Tom is still away, but now in police academy. Sylvie is now engaged to this guy named Roy, who isn't bad looking but talks a lot about nothing. Marion's words, not mine. Sylvie and Roy has had some intimate moments, though she doesn't really go into detail, but Marion's thing is, how could you let this happen? That's him taking advantage of you. And Sylvie's like, I'm in love, like really in love, not like the little crush you have on my brother. And besides, Tom isn't like that. Marion sat stumped on what she meant by Tom isn't like that. I think I know what she means, but I'll just keep reading. Moving along, she proceeds to write about her first day as a teacher. She was extremely nervous. I mean, homegirl couldn't even speak. Wait, let me go back before her first day. All she could think about is Tom's reaction to her becoming a teacher. What he would say, what he would do, facial expressions, everything. Like, sis, relax. But here's the kicker. You know how new teachers, they'll write the date and their name on the chalkboard? Y'all, tell me why Marion was standing there contemplating writing Tom's name instead. Sis is beyond obsessed at this point. Like, girl, you are at work. Be professional, please. But anyways, moving along. As she writes her letter to Patrick, she asks him, does her teaching experience compare to the museum? So Patrick works at a museum. We just don't know what he does yet. By the way, she's writing all of this not knowing if she would ever actually read this to Patrick, because she knows as she continues the story, it won't be so happy. But anyways, she recounts late September 1957. She's been teaching for a few weeks now. She's outside with her kids and she hears a familiar voice. Marion? Now y'all know, my girl was shocked, right? She couldn't believe her eyes or her ears. He was skinnier than he was before, hair shorter, but equally as handsome. And to her surprise, he came to the school just to see her. As nervous as she was, the only conversation she could make was asking when he would teach her to swim. He laughed, finding it unbelievable that she still hadn't learned, something he'd actually forgotten all about. 8 a.m. Saturday mornings was the decided time for private swim lessons. She arrived early and stood there daydreaming, imagining him emerging from the sea. Meanwhile, he's literally standing there shouting that he doesn't have all day. Now, if this story continues the way I think it will, then this whole daydreaming obsessive behavior is going to play a huge role in the conclusion of this. So remember I said this. But moving along, the first swimming lesson didn't go as smoothly as she would have liked. She kicked him in the groin trying to gain her balance. Not on purpose though. Though painful, he let it slide and they continued the lesson Saturday after Saturday. During this time, she actually started to get to know Tom. For one, he joined the police force because he didn't want to go to the army, and being in such a great shape, it was better than working at a factory. He also mentions that he's been going to the art gallery. Art isn't something that he's ever had interest in, and in his words, but now I'm seeing something really special there. Marion wasn't into art, but she was open to the idea. The conversation doesn't go any further until after Sylvie's wedding. 3 things about Sylvie's wedding that stands out. 1, Marion was a bridesmaid, but as she was walking down the aisle, she's imagining she and Tom getting married. Like, girl, get a grip everything is not about you and Tom. 2, Sylvie lied about being pregnant in order to have a shotgun wedding. The funny thing is, the third thing that stands out is that she regrets it and envies Marion's single lifestyle. Not a bad envy, more of a, dang man, I should have waited, like that. During the reception, we have a very pivotal moment between Marion and Tom. She starts to feel a vibe between the two of them. I mean, he put his hand on her hip, for Christ's sake. That's got to mean something, right? Well, that came to a screeching halt when he followed up with, I'd like you to meet someone. I've been interested to know what you think. And Marion was like, not you want me to scope out your potential girlfriend? Well, that's not exactly what she said, but she wanted to. Her heart dropped. That's until Tom said, well, he works at the art gallery. Phew, that was a close one. Just one of his male friends. At least that's what she was thinking. At the art gallery, Marion sees another side of Tom. He's brighter, lighter, and more chipper. He anxiously awaits his friend's arrival while Marion tries to soak in the moment. I mean, on a date with the Tom. This was huge. The only thing that's stopping her from being fully present is the loud echo of her kitten heels on the art gallery floors. Her words, not mine. As she proceeds to write, we also get another glimpse into the life of she and Patrick and Tom in present day. Marion quite enjoys being Patrick's caretaker. She takes pride in being there for him and helping him during his most vulnerable moments, including bathing. One day after a bath, Patrick said something to Marion that he had been struggling to pronounce for a while, and she said he said it as clear as day. Where's Tom? Where is Tom? He's been absent the whole while. I guess time will tell. Back to her recount of the art gallery. Tom's friend finally shows up. Average height, mid-30s, dark curls, thick mustache, pink cheeks, wide forehead. Tom's reaction was different than Marion had seen of him. Boyish in nature as they greeted one another shaking hands. Patrick, this is Marion Taylor. Marion's a teacher, St. Luke Primary. Marion, Patrick Hazelwood. Patrick took immediate interest in Marion, was curious about her career, how swim lessons were going. To her pleasant surprise, Tom had been telling him about her interest in art. He also thought she was a beautiful woman. It was a pleasant meeting, though Marion couldn't remember exactly how she felt about him back then, since so much had since happened. The three of them became quite the item, going to operas and such. Patrick often paid for them, even though Tom insisted to allow him to help. But seeing as though Patrick had racks on racks on racks, and Tom was lightweight struggling, that was out of the question. Time went on, and it's now 1958, and more days like this followed them hanging out. But Marion was growing tired of all this shared time. Not to mention, Marion wanted to do some things with Tom. Y'all hear me? Things. Unnatural practices is what they called it. But that all changed one day when there was a knock at her door. Her father answered. What can I do for you? Is Marion in? And who might you be? Oh, I'm sorry. I'm Tom Burgess. Phyllis! Marion! Tom's here. It's Tom. Come on in, boy. Come in. Why all the commotion? Well, you see, Marion had told her parents about Tom, about their outings. But of course, she conveniently left out that there was always a third party. Her parents were happy to finally meet Tom, and she was happy to later find out she finally had time all to herself. Instead of stopping at their usual meetup spot to wait for Patrick, they kept walking. Tom said that Patrick was in London. No Patrick? Marion was ready to get lit. She dashed off to the bar so fast, but when Tom insisted that they leave, she yelled at him, "What the bloody hell is wrong with you? Can't we just have a drink like a normal couple?" Couple? Girl, don't be giving yourself no titles. When did you start claiming you? That's how you get your feelings hurt. Couldn't be me. As she's going off, Tom grabs her and kisses her. She thought he did it to shut her up, but in that moment, it didn't matter because they were lip to lip. With her arm locked around his, they kept strolling along till they approached Patrick's house. I'm confused. Heck, Marion is confused. Meanwhile, Tom's just moseying himself on in. The house is beautiful, but that's beside the point. We all want to know, why are they there? Why do you have his keys? Marion asked. Tom, of course, ignored her. Shall we have a drink? Gin, whiskey, brandy, cognac. Tom, what are we doing here? Or how about the martini? Come on, Marion, stop acting like a school teacher and at least have a brandy. It's great here, isn't it? You can't tell me you don't like it. Well, though Patrick is indeed in London, he lets Tom use his place. Marion, of course, had more questions, but Tom is like, listen, let's just enjoy the moment. He tells her how great of a cook Patrick is, and they rummage through the kitchen, drinking, laughing, and talking. Tom then took her hand and went into another room, a bedroom. The mood changed. An awkward silence, a daring heat, a gentle kiss. His nervous hand. Tom admitted he'd never done this before, and neither had she. So she told him nothing had to happen. He walked away from her and stared out the window with his hands in his pocket. "Want to get another drink?" she asked. But it was met with silence, as was each question after. She was trying to break the ice after that awkward moment to no avail. Then suddenly, he walked over to her, laid his head in her chest, and began to cry. I just wanted everything to be nice for you. And she's like, it is. What do you mean? And he continues, I want to tell you how I feel. She's like, okay, how? And he says, I want you to be my wife. Part 2. Even though we know Tom and Marion end up together, we're sort of left with a cliffhanger because the perspective of storytelling changes. It's September 27th, 1957, and we're reading a journal entry, this time from Patrick Hazelwood. Now, if memory serves me correctly, as if I can't just go back and look, this is around the same time Tom came back home and stopped by the school to see Marion. Interesting. Patrick's journal is a little bit different, yet still similar. You see, the thoughts and feelings that he has, he can't be so free in expressing. At least he doesn't feel as comfortable doing so. He's met someone, but because he prefers not to name names, he just refers to him as my policeman. They meet as Patrick was being a good Samaritan calling help for this crazy lady who was hit by a car, but for some reason didn't want to admit to that when the policeman showed up. But Patrick was smitten at first sight. And though the conversation was short and sweet, the policeman's warmth and inviting grin left him wanting more. So what does he do? He took a page from Marion and stalked the dang on policeman. Now, I don't think y'all hear me. When I say stalked, Patrick knew the place, day, and time down to the minute. St. George Road, Saturday, 11:30. Like, dang, obsessed much? I mean, with the policeman looking like this, who could blame him? But still, I'm like, god damn. But anyways, because he put so much effort into accidentally running into him, they have another conversation. This time, a proposition. Careful not to overstep boundaries, he offers to do a painting of the policeman, something that will tie into what he's trying to accomplish down at the art museum where he works. Removing his helmet, the policeman responds, well, I've never been asked to model before. Patrick was taken aback, not by what he said, but by his hair. Short, wavy, blonde curls. It's so interesting that his hair would strike him like that because we all know this guy who has the same effect on people in real life. But anyways, the policeman obliges. I'll do it. Why not? And they go their separate ways. Patrick whistling and bopping about. Now I have to say, reading Patrick's journal entries are not as fun only because he writes in shorthand, and he does that of course because he's trying to be as meek as possible. But as a reader, I'm like, it's not as engaging. But new journal entry, September 30th, 1957. Patrick is in disbelief that he's met such a beautiful specimen. He still feels it's pretty risky for him to write about it. Though he's 15 years or so older, the policeman makes him feel like a young boy, taking him back to that feeling of his first crush. He even talks about an old lover, Michael, the times they had eating and drinking with each other, dancing naked in the living room. But his policeman was nothing like Michael, which is what he loved the most. He was a light and delight, as he called it, but ironically, that's what scared him most. October 1st, 1957. Patrick is nervous as all hell. Why? He and his policeman meet today. at his job for the first time. Upon meeting him in the lobby, he's not nearly as recognizable in his street clothes, and he looks a lot younger. Patrick is in panic mode. Like, why am I doing this? This little boy, he's beautiful beyond words. I can't. This is a mistake. Reluctantly, he escorts him to his office, and they get off to an awkward start. The policeman points out a picture of Patrick that was taken by his ex. Patrick insists on him taking a seat. The policeman insists on not. And then there's this awkward silence until Patrick's secretary comes in to pour tea. Patrick notices that the policeman doesn't watch her as she bends over to pour the tea, and that was his cue to proceed with his thirst-trapping plan. He starts talking about his job and then proceeds to ask him questions about himself. He says it's a part of his process, and there will be several sessions before they start painting. I'm like, you're really trying to trap him. The policeman was even like, well, that's strange, but nevertheless, because the mood had lightened, they agreed to meet again. Same time next week, Patrick asked. The policeman nodded. Thank you, Patrick. October 3rd, 1957. Jackie, Patrick's secretary, is asking him way too many questions for his liking. Who's that guy? A policeman? He doesn't look like a policeman. A new art subject? Is he? Jackie, I'm on the phone. Please. Well, he didn't say that, but I know he wanted to. Instead, he picked up the phone and pretended to dial. When she left his office, his heart was beating through his chest, and he already had an irregular heartbeat, so that just added to the anxiety. Were the ladies who worked there talking about his private life? Nah, they couldn't be. Or wait, were they? The thought was stressing him out, so he left the office and walked out into the pouring rain to seek comfort from the one person who can make this all better. His policeman. He's like, when I get there, there won't even be anything to say. I'll just fall into his arms and he'll embrace me. And I'm not making any sense. What am I talking about? Of course I have to explain my random showing up to his post. You know what? I'm gonna just go home and just get into bed because I can't do this. Well, those were some of his thoughts, but not exactly. But y'all know I gotta improvise a little bit. October 4th, 1957. Patrick is lollygagging around the museum, daydreaming about his policeman, and the Tuesday he gets to see him again, when suddenly his policeman is standing before him, looking at a painting. He told him he came to just get a second look. Patrick didn't care if he stopped by just to use the bathroom. He was just glad to see him, child. He asked, has he seen anything interesting, and the policeman mentions a painting of a naked woman with goat's legs. Never seen anything like that before. So Patrick laughed and started to explain Greek mythology to him. The policeman mentioned the only other person who's ever talked about art with him is his friend named Marion. And y'all, this part tripped me out. So as soon as he mentions Marion, Patrick goes down this rabbit hole of thoughts about what he can and cannot deal with. Having a friend is cool, nothing threatening there. Having a girlfriend is even cool. Heck, his ex Michael had a girlfriend and that didn't stop him. A fiance, a wife, that's even okay because they just stay at home all day. And they're usually glad to have more time away from their husbands anyway. Y'all, this dude is literally sitting there plotting how he wants and doesn't mind being the side dude. Oh, but he draws the line if the guy has a lover. The idea of his guy being in love with someone else, that's like too much. But other than that, any titles, he's alright. He can be the side dude. But anyways, the policeman goes on to tell him that the swimming lessons are going horrible with his friend Marion, but he finds humor in it. Patrick started feeling away, so he did 3 things. He showed him a statue of Icarus, another naked Greek figurine, just to see if he would pique his interest as the naked woman did. The second thing he did was told him to bring his friend Marion to the museum. And this wasn't just a nice gesture, he went to size up his competition. And lastly, the cherry on top, because there wasn't enough space in his office, and he didn't have all the necessary equipment, he decided that their painting location needed a new setting. His place, October 5th. 1957. In this journal entry, he's hungover from the night before. He admits he's lonely and depressed, and the only thing he has to look forward to is his policeman coming to his flat on Tuesday. Besides, they shared a moment looking at Icarus' statue together, so there was more to come, right? He decides to go to the Argyle, a gentleman's club / gay bar / hotel, I believe. Place where you don't have to question anything. You don't have to walk on eggshells. You can just be. He doesn't particularly like places like that because he has an image to uphold. But what else is there to do? While he's there, all the while he's thinking about, just take a wild guess. Yeah, him. He gets super intoxicated and tries to pick up a guy in the bar. He's like, I'll see where this goes tonight, but I still have my policeman on Tuesday. The guy's not really feeling him, but he was kind of like, what the heck, why not? They decide to meet up in 10 minutes, but on his way to the spot, he gets a derogatory phrase shouted at him. Totally kills his high, even though he's unfortunately used to it. He decides to just go home. The lights at the end of the tunnel, 2 more days until Tuesday. October 8th, 1957. The day we've all been waiting for. Well, at least Patrick. He anxiously awaits for his policeman's arrival, and when he finally arrives, it's kind of awkward. Patrick is marveling at the fact that his policeman is finally in his presence, in his flat, in the flesh. And his policeman is like, shouldn't I get changed in my uniform so we can get on with this? Patrick is nervous out of his mind, dropping his pencils and everything, picking them up, trying to steady his hand. You would be nervous too if you came up with this elaborate lie just to get someone you were lusting over to come over. As he begins to draw him, surprisingly, his policeman is the one who breaks the ice. Bet you never thought you'd have a policeman sitting in your bedroom. I'll bet you'd never thought you'd be in an artist's studio. Patrick is still so nervous he can barely look at him, so he just lets the policeman talk as he draws, until he brings up the fact of being a man who likes things that are not typical of men, art and things of that nature. Patrick tells him how his dad made it very clear that being interested in the arts were for women only, so to now be able to enjoy it as a career means a lot. The first session comes to a close as Patrick is finding it hard to control himself. He's been wanting to hug, kiss, touch on his policeman since he walked in the door, but instead of taking that risk and making the first move, he says, same time next week, October 13th, 1957. Patrick visits his mother, who has been feeling ill, old age mostly. She still lives in the childhood home he grew up in from age 16. 2 interesting things are mentioned from this journal entry. 1, Patrick's dad used to be creeping back in the day, cheating on his mom left and right. Even got someone pregnant, which is why they skipped town and all moved there when he was 16. Child, the ghetto. 2, he and his mom have a great rapport. She's never asked him, when are you bringing a nice young lady home? And when asked by others about her son's marital status, she responds, Tricky's just not like that. Tricky is his nickname. You know, short for Patrick. Tricky, Patrick, Trick. It was kind of like what's understood doesn't need to be explained, and he was grateful for that, and I thought that was pretty cool. But what I am confused about is why he was so comfortable being a side dude when he was so angry at his dad for stepping out on his mom. Dude even peed in the spot he saw his dad kissing another woman because he was so pissed. No pun intended, but you get what I mean. But moving along, October 14th, 1957. This journal entry has a few OMG moments. Patrick meets with his boss, Mr. Houghton, to discuss the kids' experience program he's been wanting to do. Mr. Houghton is kind of on board, but he's like, you're trying to bring live music and all, you're just doing too much. You gotta take baby steps. And what is this project Miss Butters was telling me about you drawing ordinary people? Miss Butters is Patrick's secretary, Jackie. Patrick got so nervous. He's like, why is she telling my business? To save face, he tells him it's just an idea that he hasn't even really started on. The two of them take a stroll outside where they both spot one of the men who works at the Argyle club. Patrick looks on in terror as he doesn't want to be recognized, and Mr. Houghton looks on in confusion. The Duchess of Argyle is in full face in broad daylight, serving looks, okay? Mr. Houghton comments that he gets that he can't help who he is, but why be so blatant? And how he doesn't understand men not fancying women because they are the most beautiful creatures on earth. Y'all, when I say Patrick's reply took me out, he said, I try not to let it bother me, sir. Not all women are lovely after all. Some look very like men and no one bats an eyelid at them, do they? I see no lies told. But they get back to the office, and Patrick pulls Jackie to the side to tell her not to be telling his business. If he hasn't brought it up to the powers that be, then don't say anything. Later, he goes home and starts thinking about his ex, Michael. I think I failed to mention that Michael has passed on. But Patrick recalls Michael's landlord who lived above him, Mrs. Esme Owens. How Michael trusted her and her discretion about his lifestyle. But something about Esme didn't sit right with Patrick. One day, Michael got a random letter blackmailing him because they had seen him out in a compromising position. For silence, they demanded £5. Against Patrick's wishes, he sent the money. A couple of weeks later, there was another letter, this time demanding £10. And because of this, Michael decided it was his time to no longer live. October 15, 1957. It gets spicy. When I tell y'all there are details, there are details. It's Tuesday. And along with worrying about his mother's health and wanting her to come stay with him, Patrick is looking forward to seeing his policeman. His policeman arrives, and it's the regular routine, you know. Shall we get on with this? Some drawings, some small talk. But then they're talking about how heavy the policeman's uniform is. And Patrick is like, it can't be that heavy. The policeman insists that he tries it on, and they laugh a bit about it. Then they both sit on the couch. His policeman asks him if he makes for a good portrait, and the mood suddenly changes. The policeman has his arm on the back of the couch, lightly grazing Patrick's neck. I'm like, not the policeman making the first move. I mean, it got heated. I was reading like, oh my God, it's the heat on. Why am I so hot all of a sudden? But I should note that they didn't take things all the way, but some things happen, if you catch my drift. Afterwards, they sit for a moment, and the policeman rushes out the door in a panic. He's wondering if he should even come back, and Patrick is like, yeah, you should. His policeman responds, it's not that simple, is it? October 19th, 1957. Patrick has been thinking about that Tuesday night all week, replaying it in his mind over and over again. He couldn't help but wonder how his policeman might be feeling and how things would be moving forward. October 25th, 1957. There's a news article talking of a police chief and others under fire for crooked activity. Patrick at first was relieved. It was about time they were getting caught for their wrongdoings, but then he thought about his policeman and the pressure he may be facing because of it. But they'll discuss that when they see each other again. You know, next Tuesday, right? November 4th, 1957. It's been 3 weeks and his policeman has ghosted him. 3 Tuesdays and nothing. But to my surprise, Patrick doesn't seem very worried. Instead, he takes the opportunity to travel to London to boast to his friend Charlie about his policeman. Charlie has company, a guy named Jim who works for him. But Patrick enjoys seeing them together, their dynamic, their freeness, something he can see himself having with his policeman. When he tells Charlie about him, Charlie is like, you don't say, Mr. Goody Two Shoes is out here taking risk and with a cop at that. Who'd have thought? But he warns him not to get too caught up. And Patrick was like, pot, meet kettle. Because I just sat there with you and your man who lives with you. Charlie's like, yeah, but it's not that deep for us. We know what it is. Patrick's response, you wait. This time next year, he'll be living with me. Child, I know that's gonna bite him in the butt. Really quick, if you've made it this far in the video, first, thank you. I surely appreciate it. And as a token of my appreciation, I've decided to do something special. As much as it pains me to do so, I will be giving my personal physical copy of the novel My Policeman away to one of you. It's such a good read, and I know whoever gets this will appreciate it. So, here's how you enter to win. You must like this video and subscribe to the channel. Share this video along with 2 other videos of your choice that are not Harry Styles related. Once you've done so, send screenshots of your like, subscribe, and sharing to my email, theblushbunny8@gmail.com. That's it, pretty simple. Most people don't watch the full video, so trust me when I say you have a good chance at winning. Stay tuned for part 2 is linked down in the description, as well as in the comments, as well as on your screen. See you in a minute. Meanwhile, Tom's just moseying. God dang. Meanwhile, Tom's just moseying. Oh my God, I can't talk. Meanwhile, Tom's just moseying himself. Oh my God, it's terrible. Meanwhile, oh God, this is funny. Meanwhile, Tom's just moseying his. I cannot talk. Oh God. Oh God. Let me drink some water.